Today's video is a collaboration with Creep Reads. If you enjoy his narration, a link to his channel will be provided in the description, where you can find many other scary story videos and creepypastas for your listening pleasure. As always, thank you for watching, and have a great weekend. Number 4. The second day into a 4-day stay after having my son, 24 hours of labor the night after I finally had him, my now ex-husband and I decided to go downstairs and sit outside at one of the hospital benches just to get some air. I got my son to sleep and made sure he was secure in the nursery with attending nurses before heading off. This was around 11:30 at night. This hospital has a different colored band for the maternity ward, corresponding with the band that your child has on as well, as some kind of let's not switch babies precaution. The woman approaches us and notices my band and asked if I just had a baby. I told her I had. She asked if it was a boy or a girl, to which I responded. And then she starts getting into a story of her multiple miscarriages and how she was infertile. This is when I started noticing that she looks like she's tweaking, jittery, wide-eyed, looking around, picking at her skin. And her husband had the dome light on in the car, staring at us the whole time. She then starts asking me if he sleeps with me or in the nursery, and how I delivered him, and how old he was. Avoiding her questions and getting seriously freaked out, I look in the car again and notice an empty infant car seat next to the other child's. I immediately shut down the conversation and tell my ex-husband that I'm starting to feel pain again. C-section, so it was believable, and I hightailed my sore ass the fuck out of there. I get back upstairs to the maternity ward and alert the head nurse. She immediately locks down the ward for the night and calls the cops. Come to find out, there's been a missing child case in one of the neighboring counties, with a matching description of the child in the car, and a few hospitals in the area had been getting calls about their maternity wards over the course of the last week. I talked to the cops and gave them descriptions of everyone and the car seats. They stood out because they had a really cute pattern, and they thanked me. Hopefully I can never meet you again, kidnapping crazy woman, because now you're in prison. Number 3.
I grew up on the countryside, right next to a national park frequently visited by nature lovers and bird enthusiasts. It was the kind of park where you're not really allowed to bike or ride horses, only walk or run. But 10-year-old me felt it was a stupid rule and did so anyway, because the trails were perfect for it. I knew fully well that I wasn't supposed to do that, and was caught a few times, but nothing came of it, apart from a half-hearted, "don't do it again." And I did, of course. Until one day, something frightening happened that made me stop. My family were horse breeders, and I would often take one of the horses for a ride, usually in the Forbidden Park. This day, very early morning, the first day of the summer holiday, it was beautiful outdoors, misty and foggy, yet a sky that promised a sunny day ahead. Since it was so early, before 6 o'clock, I knew there wouldn't be anyone on the trail to see me, so I let the horse set off full speed along the trail. I only slowed down on the part of the trail that got steep on one side, leading down to the river, because the thought of one step close to the edge was too much, even for a kid with next to non-existing risk assessment skills. Suddenly, the horse came to a halt and refused to take another step. I grew up with horses all my life and knew that that usually indicates that you need to investigate. Is there something wrong with the hoops? Did the horse spot something that spooked it? The hoops were fine, but the horse didn't move an inch. That's when I saw it. Someone had set up a trap, a thin sharp metal wire across the trail. in perfect neck height for an adult. I stopped and looked around, but didn't see anyone. The wire was well attached to 2 trees and impossible for me to remove, so I led the horse around it, and to do so, I had to walk a bit up to the wooden area on the side of the trail. That's when I heard the singing. There was a song called Hedge Tom Tugabar, and it was that melody, but the lyrics were different and sung in a muffled, sniggering voice. Today, I only remember parts of it, but translated, it would have been something like, "Hey, all you runners, come here passing, let the lifeblood pour out." I, as silently as I could, and with my heart in my throat, backed away, got up on the horse, and hurried back the way I came as fast as I could. I knew I had to tell someone about it, but at the same time, wanted to avoid admitting to riding a huge and very forbidden horse on those protected trails. So now, I had a problem. The old stories about a mad old man living in a shed in the woods, a shed that was once a cottage for the local hunter, came back to me as I hung on the horse for dear life. I got home and told my older brother what had happened, and he went back there with me in tow. We found the wire trap, and after a while of searching, we also found a spear-like pole in the ground, right on the spot where you'd land if you came running and jumped over the fallen tree on the trail. That's when we called the police. The area was searched, and several similar traps found, but no sight of the old man. The following summer though, there was big news in a local paper about spear-like poles being found right under the water surface, directly under that little tower you're supposed to dive from at the lake. And black garbage bags filled with big rocks were found on a narrow bridge crossing the river, so that if a car had hit it, risk is, it would have gone off the road and into the water.
Number 2. I was 10 years old and just started 5th grade. I made a new friend in school, Jenny. My parents allowed me to go over for a sleepover at her house. They had met her mom once. My mom and dad were pretty laid back because I was their last child. My sisters were all 9 to 13 years older than me. So my mom dropped me off, said hello to Jenny's mom, and left. Me and Jenny started playing karaoke when her mom decided that she was going to leave. She said goodbye to us, gave us kisses on the cheek, and I remembered that she smelled like black licorice. Me and Jenny were left to do whatever we wanted for the next 5 hours. Jenny's older sister came home around 1 a.m. and told us that we should go to bed because we were falling asleep on the couch. So we went into Jenny's room and laid in her bed. Later that night, I can't be sure what time because it was pitch dark, Jenny's mom came home. I woke up to a pounding sound on Jenny's door. I started yelling in fear when I felt a hand over my mouth. It was Jenny telling me to be quiet and pretend to be asleep. But at that moment, it was too late. Her mom kicked in the door and stormed over to the bed and grabbed Jenny's face. She began screaming at Jenny because we had accidentally left the TV on. I was trying to hide under the covers, but she saw me. She began slamming her fists on the bed around me and screamed, "You think you're better than me?" over and over. I was sobbing, and all I could think about was going home. I was so scared, and I begged her mom to let me call my parents because I felt sick. Her mom grabbed my chin, looked at me in the eyes, and said, "I know what you're doing, little girl, and you ain't going anywhere until I say you can." She stormed out of the room, slamming the half-broken bedroom door behind her. Jenny said nothing, and neither did I. Needless to say, I did not sleep that night. In the morning, when I went to call my mom, Jenny's mom was on the phone, and she wouldn't let me use it, even though I asked multiple times. Finally, she was going to take a shower, and she passed the phone off to Jenny's sister and said, "Don't let that little bitch use this phone. If you do, I'm not buying cigarettes for you anymore." I was a sheltered child at the time, but when I overheard that, I knew I needed to get out of there. I approached Jenny's sister, and she basically threw the phone at me. She was ready to give me the phone before I even asked for it. With a look of fear in her eyes, she said, "My mom is calling her guy. You need to call your home now." And so I did. She saved my life, and I still believe that to this day. Was her guy someone who was going to get rid of me? I shudder at the thought. The rest of the story isn't very exciting. My mom picked me up, and I acted like nothing was wrong. 2 days later, it was Parents' Day at school. Jenny was in my class, which meant her mom was also there. Her mom approached me and asked me why I never wanted to come over anymore, and accused me of being a mean girl. She talked to me in a way that seemed harmless, therefore wasn't obvious to my mom or my teacher. I kept my mouth shut and didn't say a word until 2 weeks later. My older sister was babysitting me while our parents were at the movies, and I broke down and told her what happened because I couldn't stop thinking about it. She comforted me and told my parents. We all hugged each other and cried. A couple of weeks later, Jenny stopped coming to my school. My classmates wondered what happened, and so did I. I didn't want to ask my parents what happened. 15 years later, I heard from Jenny on Facebook. There was no life-changing conversation. We just exchanged pleasantries. That's life sometimes. Number 1. When I was 16, I was very involved in dance. I took lessons at my local studio at around 6-ish. The classes lasted around 2 hours and was located at an area known to be populated by gangs. I got out of class about 2.5 hours later that night. The studio started to close up and I was waiting outside on a bench. I texted my dad to come pick me up and stared ahead for a little while, waiting for almost 20 minutes. By then, everyone on the road was gone. It was then that I noticed someone directly across the street from me. It was hard to see his face, but he seemed to be about 20-something years old. Now I was kind of set off, because no one except people from the dance studio would be out at this time. Although I was kind of weirded out by this guy, I just brushed it off and continued to stare at the ground, while looking at him out of the corner of my eye. If he had just walked right by, I wouldn't have been so scared, but he was just standing there, staring directly at me. I looked up at him, and it was at that point that he decided to come walking across the street towards me. My heart started beating really fast, and I stood up and started fast walking away. He then started sprinting towards me while screaming,
"Come back here, girl. Come back here right fucking now."
I was crying and running as fast as I possibly could. He slowly started gaining on me. He was still screaming when I suddenly saw my dad's car pull up to where I was. He quickly got out of the car and yelled at the guy, "Get the fuck away from my daughter," and brought out the baseball bat that was in his car. The guy backed away slowly and then ran off. I've never been so glad to see my dad right at that moment, or else I don't know what could have happened. Hey guys, Unit 522 here, and I want to thank you very much for watching my video. I would appreciate it very much if you would share, like, and comment, and if you're new to this channel, become one with the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story or experience that you want featured on this channel, you can always send it to my email or post it on the Free Horror Stories subreddit. The links for those can be found in the description below. If you would like to help out this channel even more, consider a PayPal donation. And for more updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter. There's nothing wrong with a little darkness in your life, as long as you never forget there's always a reason to be afraid.